Hello, everyone. I welcome you to a new series titled Rebound with Resilience. This is our first episode, and I have titled that What's Wrong? This series I have designed with an intent to assist you get back on track when you struggle at your workspace. Meet Michelle. Now, while you're watching this series, I'm going to get you some real client stories here. These stories will help you understand how can you, in so many ways, rebound with resilience. We start with the story of Michelle. Michelle is a project lead. She is holding, she has more than 13 years of work experience. She's been a great leader and has in the past managed a large team, but right now, at present, she is leading a team of more than 7 people. The problem is, Michelle has just stepped out of a team meeting. This team meeting has been a very important one because in this team meeting, Michelle got to learn something about her appraisal and few new changes that the new leadership has been proposing, which are now being implemented with immediate effect. After the announcement, Michelle was quite disappointed, but she couldn't really share her thoughts, her emotions with anyone else. All she did was she just walked out of the meeting and sat with herself in a very similar posture. She was confused, annoyed, and irritated to the hilt because this was the second time that she has missed her promotion, a project that she has been working for a very, very long time, neglecting her family, even her personal work, for the sake of meeting the deadlines. She was working round the clock, but despite her best efforts, her commitment, her timings to this complex project, and also that she has been having some meetings with the HR which never gave her the red signal. She just learned in the meeting that she has stepped out that she has again missed her promotion. She sat there completely in not in a state of shock basically, but she was quite irritated and confused, not really being able to understand what really was going wrong and where. And this is the point at which she connected with me. In a nutshell, Michelle issues her conundrum. I put her through a coaching program where bringing her to a point where she develops a plan with clarity and direction and help her rebound with resilience to the setback and challenges that she was going through. To begin with, the first thing when I put Michelle to a diagnosis phases in my program, the first thing I learned about her was that she had a very low levels of self-compassion. And maybe you are equally surprised the way Michelle was when I told her that she has been quite critical of her own self because some of the narratives that she shared with me, and also while she was talking and explaining her issue, right from the time that she has been so engaged and involved in the project to all that has happened and how she was promised a promotion not directly, but how she kind of missed that out, and how in right now, despite the best efforts, she sat here totally lost and not really able to understand what was really going wrong. And on top of that, I'm telling her, look, Michelle, you've been very, very low on the levels of self compassion that you need to practice with yourself. And she was like, why? How is that? And why are you telling me this? And how is that connected to, you know, my current state of being? In this series, friends, this is precisely what I would like to take you all on a journey where through real life examples and case studies, I'll help you understand how at our workspace certain things impact us, not just in our personal life, but even to the extent of the job and role we are in. Something very similar to what was going on with Michelle. Self compassion means we treat ourselves with the same love and kindness that we would show a friend who's going through a difficult time. But often it has been seen that we are the last one to receive that. Whether we make mistakes, experience failure, or we are facing a challenging circumstance, we are as deserving of our respect and warmth as anyone. This is a concept quite alien to a lot of people, and that is the reason why, in the very first place, we land into difficult situation the way Michelle was. So the first thing in the diagnosis, when we figured out that she was very low on self-compassion, I gave her a method to address. This method is basically this method would would help Michelle begin with a kind of, I would say, the very first step to self-compassion. And this is very useful for most of us who are alien to the subject, who really do not know what is it and how does it matter and how come that with the lack of self-compassion is I'm landing here in my workspace. So I would want you now to pause this video, and the next few minutes I'm going to teach you the very basics of it, a very simple technique that you would do along with me. And just like Michelle, you will get to learn how you can practice self-compassion with yourself. So let's get started. This technique is called letter to a best friend. Now, first thing, before we get more into this letter and the technique, I would want you to pause this video here. Take 3 deep breaths and then replay or play the video again. So, the step one we're going to do here is we identify a recurring self-criticism. So think about a particular recurring self-criticism that you would like to overcome, something very unkind or negative that you say to yourself about yourself. Perhaps you're critical of your appearance, that's a particular body part or your facial feature, or to do something with your ability at work or your social skills. Just simply write down what you are particularly self-critical about. In the case of Michelle, I cannot share the confidential data with you, but I exactly gave her the same instructions which I'm giving you. And I just want you to pause this video again and think about something that you're particularly self-critical about. This is your first step to cultivate self-compassion. Now, once you're done with that, once you get to learn what is it that you're quite self-critical about or you criticize yourself quite often, now think about how this comes up in your given day. When does it specifically occur and in what type of situations? And what do you tell yourself when it really shows up in different situations? So, for example, sometimes we feel uh, we may not really pay attention to this, but we often tell ourselves, oh, I don't think I deserve this. I'm not good enough. How dumb I am. Or anything, any sort of stuff that we might keep telling ourselves in a negative connotation. So if you have found something, write it down, and also once you've written that, think about where does it specifically occur. Sometimes our self-criticism triggers and emerge more in our workspace when we are dealing with our difficult colleagues or our subordinates or even our supervisors or a demanding client. What type of situations triggers that? A meeting, a conference, or where you're put on a spot where you cannot really answer impromptu and then you suddenly feel, oh, how dumb I was. I wish I uh, could have been more vocal or could have taken charge of that moment. Whatever it is, think about it. These abstract, subtle expressions where we get into difficult situations and when we are not really able to respond the way we are supposed to in our head, we turn inwards and become self critical. Exactly what Michelle was doing. It does no help. Instead, it harms us more than it could help us. For Michelle, the way she has been criticizing herself for the way she performed or behaved in certain meetings specific to performance appraisals and also to the project that she had high hopes on where she would be promoted while she missed her promotion gave her a lot of insights of how and what she used to tell herself. And the more she would tell herself that, the more it would manifest in her life. The reason why, at present, Michelle had even missed her promotion for the second consecutive year. For you, it could be different, but think about this and make a note. What situations does it come up? What do you specifically tell yourself? How it shows up in your life? When you answer these questions, you are taking an inward journey and getting to learn the self talk you have with yourself for you to understand how harsh and self critique you are of your own self. This in turn will tell you why that the things we tell ourselves matter so much that they manifest in our life in all the more powerful ways. So if you keep telling yourself you are dumb, you will find yourself in situations where you actually are either behaving or acting like a dumb person. If you keep telling yourself you're not good enough, you don't deserve this, you will land yourself in situations where you missed out on opportunities because the vibe you're giving out to the world is that you are undeserving. You still don't think you've reached that level where you deserve this. So for friends, this is the first step to get to learn the basics of how critical you are of your own self. Because once you do the diagnosis, the way I did for Michelle, and figured out she had very low levels of self-compassion, is when she learned that how and which and where areas she would talk to herself in such harsh and rude tone. Now, once finding that, when she got a hang on just the basics of uh, her self-talk, which was quite negative to her own self, I gave her a solution as well. I said, now, Michelle, reverse the role. This technique is called Letter to a Best Friend. I have also written a blog post on this, and I shall share the link in the description box so that you could read through if you prefer reading. But I'll tell you the steps again here. For Michelle, I asked her that if you really want to cultivate self-compassion, the first you start with writing a letter to your best friend. And how you do that is you have to put yourself in the role of you being your own best friend. So first thing, you are giving yourself the role of your own best friend. So if you have a best friend and whatever the person's name is, you just give yourself that name and take that identity for some time and reverse the role. Now imagine that your best friend has come to you and is sharing with you the person's challenges very similar to what Michelle was going through. So I said, let's say your friend, her name is Sandra. She is going through exactly the same situation and the same emotions: confused, irritated, annoyed, frustrated, and has missed her promotion. She's worked really hard, but nobody seems to bother. Nobody seems to give her her due credit, and she's just dejected, disappointed with her work, her role, her job, and everything in general. And the moment Sandra comes to Michelle, now Michelle is her best friend. So Sandra is seeking counsel. Sandra wants to know what is it that she should do in a given situation. And when Sandra puts forth her problem before Michelle, Michelle has to now, as a best friend, give her a sound counsel. Even she can hug her, give her some space, or treat her to something that she always liked. So when I asked Michelle to do this in her mind, like imagining that she has Sandra who's come with the same issue, and Michelle has to act like her best friend and offer an advice. Michelle, it was so easy for her to come up with a whole long list of ideas that can put Sandra's anxiety and stress to rest. And then finally, I asked her, now, since Sandra is you only, it's your inner self in the form of Sandra, can you apply that to your own life right now? Since you have so many good advices to your best friend, how about using it for your own self care? So, friends, as I kind of instructed Michelle, she was actually a bit surprised, and because the ideas that she was getting in, I said, sit down with yourself, talk to yourself kindly and gently. For most of us, this is a very alien and a difficult concept because we've never been taught this, but this is the core to which we develop and build our resiliency. It's a life skill that really act as our armor and our protection gear when we land ourselves in difficult situations. So, just like Michelle, friends, write a letter to your best friend, which is you, offer counsel, reverse the roles, and see what comes up. I'm sure you, as your own best friend, will have wonderful ideas and methods to take care of yourself when you land yourself in challenging situations very similar to that of Michelle. Once you do this, this is the very fundamental or one of the most simplest technique to cultivate self-compassion. In our coming episodes, I shall talk more on this and share more methods and techniques. So stay tuned and share with me how was it connecting with your best friend. If you also like to share what advice you had and how really it benefited you, I'll be more than happy to listen. I read all my emails, so I'll share my email here. Just reply with the subject line Michelle's letter to her best friend and share with me what you had been able to come up with and to what extent it helped you find a feasible solution. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.